Sales Hacker webinar, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We're coming to you live this time from Unleash, the Sales Engagement Conference. So this one is a little exciting and very, very special. I'm Colin Campbell. You know me. I'm the Director of Marketing at Sales Hacker. And I'm joined today by Jeff Winters, the man to my right. Welcome, Jeff. Thanks for being here, man.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Everybody, Jeff is the president and founder of Sapper Consulting. And he's here. He actually has a session here at Unleash in a little bit, but he's here because we're talking about the right way to follow up from a conference. So it's like really applicable to where we are and who we're talking to right now. Jeff, do you want to tell him a little bit about what Sapper Consulting actually does before we start?
Yeah, sure. I know everybody likes long intros on webinars, so I'll keep it short. But Sapper, we started 6 years ago. And what we do is we help companies, small, medium, and large, schedule really good sales meetings that end up in closed deals at a high rate. I think named us 253rd fastest growing private company in the U.S. So we love it. We love our clients. We love our people. And that's what we do.
Thanks, man. So we're talking today, like I said, about how to follow up from a conference. Jeff's got like the things everybody does wrong, the things you should do at the conference to do it right, the things in like really specific. We're going to get specific for you guys so you know exactly what to do and what not to do. But before we jump in, as usual, I just want to say two things. Number one, we are recording this. So if you get interrupted, don't worry about it. You'll get the recording later on. You can listen to that and check us out later. Number two, please go to the bottom of your screen right now and pop open the Q&A box. We want to know what your favorite way to follow up is. So open that Q&A box right now, introduce yourselves to us, give you a little shout out. Tell us your favorite way to follow up from a conference, and like what's most effective for you. Guys, sorry about the background noise. We're keeping this real for you. We're not like the fancy hoity-toity brand. We're doing this live from a conference because, Jeff and I wanted to cover this topic. We wanted to not put it off for you. So we'll try to mute ourselves to keep it down so there's not too much of it, but you're just going to have to battle through it with us. You're going to get some really good tips out of this. All right, so we've got some answers here. So somebody says sending a handwritten thank you note.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Uh-huh.
Somebody likes email and phone call. Everybody likes phone, actually. Connecting with on LinkedIn, scheduling a follow-up meeting on the spot 2 weeks later. These are some good things, guys. Yeah. All right. Thanks for joining, everybody. Ali, I can't pronounce your last name, Ali, but welcome. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for opening up that Q&A box. Feel free to ask questions throughout because you're in the live version, right? That's why you join live, so you can ask Jeff stuff. So here's what I want to start out with, Jeff, if that's okay. I want to talk about the big things that everybody does wrong first. Like, what are the things to not do when you're following up with people you met at a conference?
Okay. So let me take that even a step back.
Okay.
And set it up before we talk about what you do. So to me, it's about, all right, you're at a conference. How do I determine who I'm going to expend resources on after the conference and follow? So to me, it's like we got to create the hierarchy of individuals that we meet at a conference and how interested they are. Because I got bad news. People you think are interested, people who you wait in line with at the taco food truck that you had a glass of pinot grigio with, they're not as interested as you think they are. So let's like recalibrate a little bit how interested prospects actually are. Okay? So here's my little rule of thumb. Take it or leave it. One, person that gives you your business card, your polite chat, that's it. That's equivalent to somebody you send a LinkedIn message to that never responds. Like that's the warmth of that person. Okay? All right. So think about it that way. Number two, you've got the person that you had a good conversation with. Not great, no high fives, no hugs, but just like a good conversation. You thought they were interested. Exchange business cards. You're going to keep in touch. Make sure to follow up with me after the conference kind of stuff. That's equivalent to somebody responding to a cold email from you. Okay, they respond, I'm interested to have a demo. That's the equivalency there. And then last, you got the person that you're talking to your team about the next morning. You go, oh my God, this person had a great connection. We talked a lot about their business and our business, the same challenges. We had a high five, we did a fist bump. It's all good. This deal's going to close. That's the equivalent of a warm inbound lead. So to me, it's first, how do I understand how interested these people are versus how interested they appear? Because it's really interested, as you know, at a conference, people are away from kids, they're away from KPIs, they're away from managers asking them about deals, they're away from spouses. They are here to largely relax and learn, obviously, but largely relax. And so they're going to be open to being courteous. Do not um, do not mistake being courteous with being interested. All right, so that's the deal. First, let's figure out who's interested and who's not. Next, let's prioritize. Let's prioritize who we're going to expend resources on and what those resources are. Okay? So when you're at a conference, right, you've got this more interested bucket. What have you done? You formed a relationship. Okay, that relationship's personal. You've been with these people probably for a day or two. You've seen them in and out of sessions. You've had a great time with them. You've connected in evening activities. You're close. You're closer than you are with most any of the prospects that you have throughout the rest of your funnel. What do I see a big mistake? What's a big mistake that I see? It's taking that personal relationship and immediately moving it backwards. Okay? So I leave the conference. The next communication that I have with this person is going to anchor how personal this relationship is. Because it started great, and it's very personal. Now, I leave the conference. Let me send a follow-up email. No, because here's the problem with that. Because you're moving the relationship backwards. You're now saying, we were great. We had a great time. We had a great chat. We connected. Now you're emailing. Absolutely not. So to me, the tip is you've got multiple means of communication, some great comments. To me, it's how do you leverage it? It's being thoughtful about it. So it's video, it's text, it's gifting, it's phone calls, and it's in social connections. And to me, when you've got this more personal relationship, always text. I love keeping it text. I hate sending an email to someone who I've connected with on a personal level, who I had a good talk with, who I think is really interested, and then sending an email. Because that takes the momentum down, moves momentum back. Second thing I see people doing, so first thing I see people doing that's wrong after that long sort of intro is moving the personalization relationship back through email or something more generic. Second thing I see people doing is, okay, I'm going to follow up after this conference, but so-and-so is going to be back tomorrow, and then they got to get some stuff on their desk, and then they're going to, they got to go home, they got to be with their family, so I'm going to wait to follow up for 2 weeks. And this happens all the time. And my answer to that is absolutely not, okay? Proximity to a conference matters. Again, you've started rolling the ball down the metaphorical hill of your relationship. Don't let it stall. I'm at the airport texting people that I met at the conference. I'm immediately sending someone a really personalized gift with a handwritten note to say, hey, thanks for spending some time with me at this conference. So to me, like 2 big mistakes right off the bat, we can move on, but to me, 2 big mistakes right off the bat. Number one, not prioritizing people right, and then moving the personalized relationship backwards. And then number 2, waiting too long to reconnect with them once the conference is over.
So those are good tips. Thanks for that, Jeff. What I'm getting from the audience right now, and I'm sorry, guys, we got special microphones for this. We wanted to try something special and do this live. I know you guys have some background noise, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to put on pause for like 2 minutes. I want to save you guys some time. I know you took time out of your day to join this. We're going to put on pause. I promise we're going to find a room, a quiet place for you, and then we're going to continue, all right? So give me 2 seconds, and we'll do that, all right? Sorry, guys. Hold on. Jeff was saying that one of the biggest mistakes people make following up at a conference is, first of all, not knowing what's genuine interest in what. All right, so you're still on. Okay, so here's my question. My question is, how do you know what channel to follow up on? Because you were saying don't make it impersonal, right? Don't take something you built at the conference and then follow up with something impersonal. So how do you decide? Because there's so many options. You mentioned text, LinkedIn, a letter, maybe a phone call.
Yep. So it's all about prioritization. It's hard. Because it's really hard to differentiate the genuine interest from the non-genuine interest, especially when you're here, because everything looks like a genuine interest. And so to me, you sort of synonymize channel with a level of like resources expended. And to me, it's, okay, I've got somebody that's really interested, I think, and there you're back. So, and we're better lit, according to the community. I'm well lit. So, to me, it's about, okay, we're prioritizing these people in terms of how interested we truly think they are, and we're going to expend resources on the people that are really interested. And so, to me, the easiest example is gifting, right? And Vanny even the theme of his speech, CEO of Outreach, in the keynote. He was talking about being invincible through customer obsession and how caring is fundamental to customer obsession. And the way that caring links to gifting is if you just send a mug with your company's logo on it, or like a charger with your company's logo on it, that's insufficient. Okay, that's insufficient because it shows a lack of care. So we subscribe to John Ruhlin wrote this great book, Giftology, that we love and subscribe to, and think that the level of personalization, the level of care, and there's a corresponding level of dollars that go with that.
Yeah.
And so to me, gifting is huge, and it can be immediate after the conference. Also, Sendoso doing some really cool stuff in terms of automating gifting. That's totally worth checking out if you haven't already. But those are two great resources to think about if you're going to send really hyper-personalized gifts that are sort of indicative of customer obsession through caring. I highly recommend that as a channel. And then you got to use your brain. You got to use your gut. Quick cell phone videos and texts are so easy. They're so obvious. We think about it sort of in the more social construct, and the more professional construct. But to me, you want to make sure, high level, to answer your question, you want to make sure that your type of communication is commensurate with the level of and the type of relationship you want going forward. Because largely, not to divert this too much, largely the best relationships I've made at conferences haven't yielded results immediately.
Yeah.
To me, conference partnerships, conference referral networks, like those are the relationships that often, in the long term, bear the most fruit. And those are the personal relationships that are sort of easy to connect with. So make sure your level of personalization, your level of touch, your level of resources are commensurate with people who are genuinely interested.
No, that makes total sense. And I've heard you say something like bad text can't, good text can't fix a bad first date, something like that, right? And that's what you're referring to here, basically. Like that applies, right?
That always applies constantly, right? So the idea is that a bad text, if you have a really bad first date with somebody, like 2 hours and nothing, a lot of yes or no questions, a lot of one-word responses, okay? There's no miracle text you can send to save that date. It's a bad date. Like, that's it. Because no home run, grand slam, funny text you can send to bring that back to life. The same is true with conferences. If you're at a conference and you've got a major fish, right, a major prospect, and you just didn't connect with them, there was no great connection, just didn't happen for whatever reason. Like no incredibly personalized gift, no incredibly thoughtful text, no video is going to work if they're not interested in the first place. So just
if they didn't like you in person, they're not going to appreciate your external phone charger battery. Right?
That's exactly right. It's exactly right. And it's worse. It works in reverse. So if they didn't like you personally, and then you send them an impersonal gift, or you send them something that's over the top, it's a bad play, and you're going to end up wasting money.
Okay, so let's talk about like amount of follow-up for a second, because let's say you did have a real connection with somebody. You know that their interest was genuine, and like you're not just following up because they had happy hours and they were glad to be at the conference.
Yeah.
Amount-wise, like how long do you wait to follow up, and how much follow-up do you send? What's appropriate? How do you know when they're? How do you know when to stop?
Yeah. Well, when to stop is easy. To me, when to stop is probably never. Like you're probably, if you meet somebody at a conference and you thought they were interested, and you're sort of got that mental model of, okay, I know that I have to calibrate how interested people seemed, or like multiply it by 50% or something. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's say you've done that math, and you've got someone who you think is interested, and then you shoot them a text, no response, you give them a call the next week, you send them an email, you send them a gift, nothing. They're probably going into our nurture sequence, right? I'm going to stop to me, there's sort of like laws of being a mammal, laws of being human that still apply here. So we've got to make sure that if somebody's not responding to a couple of texts, I get it. I get the message. Maybe I misread the situation. And to me, I think the interesting point is, okay, not like when to stop communicating with someone, but when to stop believing they're going to close. That to me is the difference, right? That's the key distinction, because when you stop communicating with prospects, I mean, they could be in the journey forever, right? Through nurture and through other sort of automated messaging and what have you. But to me, it's like, when do I give up in my mind that this person is as interested as I thought they were? Because that to me is like, emotionally, that's the harder thing to swallow. Yeah. I had a great connection. I multiplied their interest by 50%, and they still were high, I thought, and now they got nothing. To me, it's a month. Like a month is a great rule of thumb. You're not like sending texts every day, obviously. Like, hey, just wanted to make sure that you have your phone charged, or I'm sure you're busy. Like, none of that. Like, they'll respond if they're interested, but a month of sort of multi-channel follow-up, and you're not getting what you need, I put them into nurture, and I emotionally deal with the fact that just weren't as into you as you thought they were.
So let's talk about like in the nitty gritty of how you guys actually follow up, because you brought a big team with you, great people, and I know you got some really good, you got some good conversations with great prospects.
Yeah.
When you go home, is everybody going to decide individually like how to follow up with every prospect?
Yeah.
Or do you have something pre-prepared, like some sequences you're going to run?
Yeah. So before we go home, we've already started that process.
Yeah.
So we huddled before this conference.
Okay.
And we said, look, let's make sure that we're noting the folks that we think are really interested, again, to differentiate from a long-term partner perspective and as well as a customer perspective. And so we're immediately putting together a Google Sheet. We're noting interest. We're trying to quantify, right? So if we can try to quantify the level of interest, the level of potential, that's really important. And then,
so you just, what do you do? Like a 1 to 5 score or something?
1 to 5 score. Yeah. 1 to 5 score, 1 to 5 score, 1 to 10 score, whatever. Sort of level of interest, potential of this person. And then we get together each day and try to talk through, okay, how do we think it would be best, given what you know about this person, to follow up? Like, and there's sort of like that ruthless prioritization of like, look, is this person really that interested, you think? What are they interested in? And then what journey do we want to take them on after the conference? And then also, like, did you learn something personal? Is there like a personal nugget that would be interesting? Because for our high priority folks that we meet here, they're getting gifts. And so the key to gifting, to go back to it, is, okay, did I learn something that's personal, that's interesting, that'll make this person smile? Yeah.
And something that's not, that you can't find on LinkedIn, because if it's data that's available, you have it, I have, everybody, the bots have it. Right? So you can't just say like, oh, your birthday, right?
Yeah. I see you've been at the company for 5 years. Let me send you a trinket. No. And that's another huge advantage of being here, especially with gifting, is you get to ask questions that the internet doesn't know.
Yeah.
And you get to see people in an element and talk to them on a human level and get stuff that the bots can't tell you. And you got to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
And the other cool thing is to make sure you store it, because people that go to conferences go to the same conference every year. You're going to see these people again. You're going to bring it up again, and they're going to go, oh, that is a relationship. That wasn't just somebody trying to sell me something.
Do you have, so when you're talking about channels to follow up, I know like we want to personalize it. We want it.
Yeah.
But which channels do you end up you find yourself or your team using most or not using as much to follow up from conferences?
So we're using email a lot for individuals where the connection maybe wasn't as strong. And so certainly, look, you don't want to leave, we want to talk to everybody. Anybody that we talk to here, we of course want to follow up with in some way, because you never know. You never know what happens down the road. But in terms, so email is the primary mode for folks that maybe the interest isn't as strong or isn't as immediate maybe. And so we're using that quite a bit. And then we've got, pre-programmed sequences and campaigns that go to those people. In terms of other vehicles of communication, text, quick videos, I'd like for us to continue to use and use more. I don't need to tell everyone of the sort of proliferation of video, but I do think people sort of underutilize video and also overemphasize like the video quality and the stagecraft. Obviously, we didn't do that here as we moved from one room to an oceanside view, so a little different. But and I think that emphasizes the point that you don't need a perfectly crafted set. Like quick iPhone video, like keeps that personal connection, keeps that one-to-one connection. But I think to your point, handwritten note, gifting, video, text in the right cadence, like in the right sequence. That's the key.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about prospects so far, but that's not like the only people you're talking to at a conference. And maybe it depends a little bit on your role, but who outside of prospects should people be looking to follow up with? And then is follow-up different for those people?
Yeah. I think it's not different in terms of the channel.
Yeah.
But I think thinking about who to follow up is a little different. So the obvious are partners.
Yeah.
Folks that could be potential referral sources, folks that could help you out in some way from a business standpoint. Like those are sort of obvious. Like some less obvious ones, I think, the conference organizers. Okay. So the conference organizers this year are going to be the conference organizers next year. And it is great to have the conference organizers on your side. Because if the conference organizers are on your side, they're going to be making introductions for you. You're going to be filling in for people on panels when they're sick. I had a situation off the subject where I had a rooming with somebody here, and he got sick. I needed a new room. Yeah. Conference organizer helped me out because everybody. So having the conference organizers on your side, underrated, super helpful.
Yeah. So one thing that I want to ask you, because we've actually gotten this question a couple of times, partly because of the noise at the beginning, but also I think you're mentioning some things and people want to hear more specifics.
Okay.
So they're asking for, can we do like a bullet point summary at the end? And do you have examples of videos that you send out that you're willing to share with the audience we could do?
I don't have them on me, and they're personalized to people, but sure, I'm happy to send one out afterwards. I'll make one for,
or we can make one.
I'll do one for somebody who I'm going to send it to after this.
Let's do that. Let's make it live.
That's our apology for the bad audio at the beginning. We'll put this together into like a package for you that you can use to follow up from conferences.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So I want to talk about messaging too.
Okay.
Because you mentioned like making it personal. But do you start trying to set a meeting? Like, what's the goal from the outreach? Is it you asking for a demo immediately, or is it just, hey, it was good seeing you. Thanks for telling me about your dog. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, this goes back to my philosophy on sales more broadly, is that to me, the prospect should always be asking for the meeting. You should not be asking for the meeting. Because if you've inspired them at the conference or in the interaction or on the call, like, you don't need to be suggesting next steps. They should be suggesting next steps.
Right.
And to me, that's a good sort of gut check on, is the prospect interested or not? And so to me, it's more personal. It has nothing to do with setting a demo or checking in or following up. It's far more personal than that. And then they should be asking to schedule the demo, not you.
If you've generated enough interest, that's what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. If you haven't, then you haven't done your job.
So
Right?
so much of this follow-up is actually how you present yourself in the conversations you have at the conference. Because like you said, a good text can't fix a bad date. So let's go back to the conference. You're at the booth, say, or maybe you're at a breakout session and you're talking about it with somebody. What are the like do's and don'ts of those conversations, the obvious stuff that you see too many people doing badly?
Yeah, so I go back to like general sales philosophy on this a little bit.
Okay.
So Gong, right? Gong's got some great data on sales calls and how much time to spend building rapport on sales calls and what the best reps do versus middle of the road reps versus lower performing reps. And I think the data applies. So best performing reps spend time building rapport at the beginning of the sales call and not at the end of the sales call, right? Very much at the beginning, not throughout, and then talking business at the end. And to me, huge mistake at people make at booths, is they're interspersing this rapport building exercise throughout, because it's so natural, right? In the beginning, you build some rapport and then you're talking business. But at the end of that discussion, which is a sales discussion, be very clear, that is a sales discussion at a conference. You have people who are naturally going to say, well, hey, are you going to the 90s party later, or blah, blah, blah. That to me is violating a cardinal rule of trying to build rapport toward the end of the call. So to me, it's a sales conversation. Treat it as such. And to the extent you follow your sales process at a conference is to the extent you'll be successful.
So what do you do if you're trying to have that sales conversation and the prospect brings starts having a side conversation or personal conversation with you? Do you go along or do you try to redirect them?
No, you can with both. I mean, you got to go along, right? We can't be robots about it. Right? People want to chit chat me up. That's fine. But just as in any sales conversation, you bring it back to the subject matter.
Right.
And you bring it back to why we're here, which is to talk business. And again, this assumes that this is a prospect that you've qualified and that's interested and that isn't trying to be your pal. But to me, you bring them back and you go along with it, because otherwise you're a robot and you're pushy and nobody likes that.
Yeah. It's almost like having a conversation with the automated email while you're just at the conference with the person. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. There's a side note here, like two other side notes, and I know we'll do the bullet point at the end, but don't underestimate people that you meet at conferences that are your friends. These are going to be your new friends, because typically now you're surrounding yourself with people where you share similar interests, and they're at a conference on a subject matter, and as are you. And these are going to be your friends for a long time. There may not be an immediate business interest, but there's a friendship. And I don't mean for that to sound hokey or Pollyannish or whatever, but I've made some of my best friends at conferences. And we've exchanged like funny texts back and forth and gifts even and like stupid stuff. Don't underestimate that, because those friends have turned out to be my best channels of business, my best sources of advice, etc. So you've got friends, there's a friendship component to this, and there's an advisory component to this that shouldn't be underestimated on.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. So it's not all about the prospects. Like I've seen people before conferences sit down, maybe if there's an attendee list, like Outreach for this conference has an app where you can see who's going.
Yeah.
They might like pick a few people, like here's what I want to talk to this person about. You think that's good? Like Because it can actually be kind of hard to find those people if you make that plan.
I think it's garbage.
You think that's
I think
garbage?
it's total garbage. I mean, so here's like every 5 things to do before you go to a conference. Number 1 is always like find the speaker list and email them. You're like, I'm on the speaker list and I got 50 emails. They're all the same. So it was bad. It was garbage. But there's a better way. Like there is a better way. It's just not that. Right? You can at a conference, put yourself in position to talk to somebody. Like everybody's there. You can find them, right? And if it's an enormous conference, then I get it. Like it's hard to sort of track people down. But and you can send a quick note with something that's interesting, but not generic sequences. Because generic sequences to a conference, to speakers, like this just in, like speakers get those in enormous quantity. And so be a little more thoughtful about it. Definitely don't be generic in mass. I can say I don't think I took any of those.
Why are people reaching out to speakers? Why not other people?
Because usually speakers lists are published. So like you can see like the attendance largely published. And so they have somebody go through and look, I get it. Like I get what's going on. I'm into it, but it just doesn't work for me.
It just doesn't work.
That's what I'm talking about. Like I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying it's not gonna work very long.
Maybe spend your time elsewhere. Okay. So it strikes me that maybe like part of the crap behavior at conferences, like either the pushiness, the roboticness, or the overly eager follow-up, like seeing everybody as a really great, high qualified prospect, maybe that comes from like goal setting. Maybe. And people come into the conference thinking I have to achieve some great outcome.
Expectations.
High expectations.
Right. Or expectations at all. I think having expectations of how many badges I'm going to scan or how many people I'm going to talk to or how many people I'm going to demo, I don't like it. I don't like it because it forces unnatural behavior in a human setting. And you don't want to force unnatural behavior. You don't want to incentivize unnatural behavior to go and scan a badge when somebody's not interested. Because then you're setting yourself up for time wasted down the road.
Yeah.
To me, conferences should not be about any expectations in terms of leads. I get it. Like people spend a lot of money on conferences to get a certain ROI. But you need to know that that's not, you can't think of it that way. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. You need to meet people. You need to get out of your comfort zone a little bit. You need to introduce yourself to people. You need to find people that are, hey, I'd love to talk to this person, and do it that way, and let it happen a little more natural.
Maybe the way to think about it is like, look, the money that's spent on the conference, that's a sunk cost. Can't take that back. Don't ruin it by don't make it worse by trying extra hard to just hit the number just because the number's there or just because you think you need to.
Absolutely right, and I couldn't have said it better.
I said something good, guys. So what
is
are we?
Unusual? I don't.
For me to say something good is really unusual.
You seem surprised.
They know.
The audience is not. The chat's blowing up. Now people had low expectations of you as opposed to.
Yeah, people want to talk. So guys, I haven't seen that many questions. I know y'all told us a lot about the noise at the beginning. I think we've gotten it better because you guys have stopped. But if you have questions for Jeff, chime in now. If you have like a conference follow-up story you want to share and get Jeff's opinion on, share that. And what are we missing here? Because we've talked about like messaging, we've talked about sequences. I've never had to follow up with prospects after a conference.
Yeah.
So you tell me.
I think one thing maybe just to touch on is that initial interaction post-conference. Like, okay, I followed up. Now I want a sales call with this person. Are they my friend? Are they my prospect?
Right.
Or are they somewhere in between?
Yeah. So do you go straight back to like the same demo language that you would give to everybody else, or is it some other start? Is that what you're referring to?
So again, this is another what I would call an anchor point.
Okay.
So to summarize on this, the way that you communicate, the first method that you use to communicate with somebody post-conference anchors the relationship where it's going to be post-conference, right? So that's why that point is so critical because it's really hard to go forward. It's hard to send a generic email after a conference and then make that relationship more personal down the road. Like that's where you are for a little while. So don't get stuck. Second is, okay, I've got another inflection point on the first sales call after that conference. How am I going to act? Am I going to act like we're friends, like we're really good friends? Am I going to act like this is just a regular cold demo? How am I going to play it? And to me, the answer is you have to absolutely do both and do both really crisply. So beginning of the call needs to be like sort of take you back to conference world, right? To give that illusion in the mind of like, okay, let me get back to that emotional state of the connection that I felt with this person when we were at this conference.
Right.
And then after that, business. And do not mix the two. Don't go back into rapport building after the first few minutes of the call. Don't do it after. At the end of the call, make sure you're doing it really, really well up front, and then not at all after that. I think that's critical. I see people make that mistake all the time.
Really, just spend too much time continuing to be friendly and kind of have the conference fun mentality.
And then you're 45 minutes into an hour-long sales call,
and you haven't done any selling.
And we should look at the product.
So we actually got another good question here from Tom Gill, and actually I think he disagrees with you.
I like it.
I think he does. So you tell me. So Tom says, it's not really about expectations, but if you're going to a conference, you spend all the money, you have to have goals to make a certain number of contacts, generate a certain number of follow-up meetings. Do you agree with that or disagree?
I like his question. I like where he's coming from. I see why he's saying it. I disagree.
Yeah.
I think that I disagree with one caveat. How about that? I disagree with one caveat. If you're bringing a team and that team has the autonomy to be great at the conference, great undefined by expectation, then to me, you let them go.
Right.
And you let them be great, and you talk about, to me, it's obvious. We spend a bunch of money on the conference. We're not going here to have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, if you've got that great team that can be autonomous, you give them the vision and you let them wow you with how they do it.
If you've got some new reps, maybe not a lot of experience, or you just can't afford the best of the best of the best,
right.
Maybe it's useful to put up some.
Then maybe you do. If you've got some inexperienced folks, that maybe you do.
Yeah.
To me, more important than that is practice. Before we go to conferences, we practice. We practice meeting people. We practice talking to people. We practice the booth. And so I think often the reason people won't go and hit the numbers you're expecting them to hit is because they're uncomfortable doing it or they don't know how. So I would maybe take the tact of beforehand doing a lot of practice, even like basic social interactions if you feel you need to, than I would setting hard numbers. Because then, again, to me, what you gain in quantity, you lose in the genuineness of the interaction.
Yeah, I love that point about practice because it's so obvious, but I feel like a lot of people don't actually do it. I mean, imagine it feels like a little weird trying to run a booth if it's the first time you've done it and you spend your whole time at the conference figuring out how to do it rather than having figured it out beforehand.
Yeah, people do not practice. People do not practice at booths, and it's not a natural situation. Like, unless you are a professional booth person, then you don't often find yourself in a position of selling at a booth. And so if you're going to spend the money to have the booth, spend the time to practice. And I don't care how experienced you are. And I get this question from time to time when I do sales talks. I've really experienced sales reps who have been really successful. They don't want to practice. Well, then that's unacceptable. Though that shouldn't be, because every great salesperson I've talked to wants to get better all the time.
Yeah.
That's key. And that's a core to their sort of belief system. And so to me, practice before you get here. Maybe the quota won't be necessary.
Right. Well, that makes sense. So when you're talking about practice, do you actually set up the booth and have prospects walk in and do the whole 9 yards? Are you practicing the whole conversation or reviewing just the talking points? How in depth is your practice? What does it look like?
Our practice is harder than the game, right? So I'm going up to people last Thursday in the office,
mm-hmm.
and I'm going, okay, I'm a prospect. Here's my profile. Let's do it. Like that.
Yeah.
And we're surprising people. It's spontaneous. It's off the cuff. And if it's not up to snuff, and we've got a feedback culture, and so it's no issue. But it's not up to snuff. They know, and so do I. And by the way, I practice too. I'm in on the practice. I'm not just holding my people accountable to being great through practice. They can do that to me too. So practice harder than the game for sure.
So what if you're a rep and you have a manager that tells you have to generate a certain number of face-to-face meetings after the conference?
Then you do it.
Then you do it.
You knock it down.
There's your answer, Matt.
Look, come on. To be a great quote I like, to be a great leader, you got to be a great follower. And it's a Jocko quote from the new book, and I love it, and it's true. If you can only push back on so many things from your boss, and
mm-hmm.
if one of them is to generate leads at a conference, go generate leads at a conference, because they're probably given that number, and they have no way to change it either. So, to be a great leader, be a great follower, perfect spot to be a great follower.
Is there a way, do you think, this is another question from Elizabeth Trandle. Thanks, Elizabeth. Is there a way, whether an attendee list is published or not, to actually network with prospects a little bit before the conference?
Yeah. So as you know now, a lot of apps, conference apps, different levels of sort of pre-conference availability of folks' contact information. But prior year attendee lists and prior year speaker lists, I know I advise not to with speakers, but if you want to go the route of networking with people and doing it in a personal, more sophisticated way, then usually prior year speaker lists and prior year sponsor lists are a great place to start. Also, conferences that are doing a great job are creating communities post-conference.
Yeah.
And have conference follow-up articles. And so it just requires a little more digging if there's no general widespread availability of contact information. And so those are some places to start looking.
You also have sometimes this phenomenon where at the conference, right, you come with like a couple people and maybe, I don't know, maybe you got like an SDR with you who happens to bump into somebody you've been trying to sell for a long time.
Yeah.
And after the conference, they mention it, hey, I ran into Tom and he had this, this, and this. How do you handle that? Like, should the SDR be the person to reach out and make an intro? Or how do you handle that, like, one degree of disconnection? Like, you wanted to meet the prospect, but you didn't. Somebody you know did.
Yeah. So you don't want to play it impersonally. And
Right.
you don't want to play it in a way is going to look awkward. So, I'll give you an example. Here's a good example. I was quoted in an article before this conference with someone I wanted to meet here. Okay. And I read the article and it was great. And I was excited about it. And I really wanted to meet her. And so I went up to her and I said, hey, I'm Jeff Winters, assuming that she had read this article, which she had not. Okay. Which she totally had not. And just cold eye me and just deadpan. I was like, man, I've read this article, shared it with my grandparents, and this woman has not read it. And so now we're in this awkward thing where am I going to say, hey, we were both quoted in the same article? No, because that's going to look awkward. That's the example and the embarrassing moment that I had that I think will translate to others. If you're degree separated, make the introduction. Make it personal.
So you've talked a lot about if you have the right people, if you have the right practice in place, you don't obsess about setting expectations or goals. But do you, after the conference, then go back and measure the ROI from your investment? You must, right?
Honestly, no. I really
Really?
don't. No, we really don't. We really don't. Because if I did that, I would have missed such incredible long-term potential. And in the same breath, I'm going to say we're not going to spend stupid money. Obviously,
right.
We're looking at how the conference went. But when do you measure ROI of a conference? At 30 days, at 60 days, at 90 days, at 180 days? Somebody tell me. When do you measure the ROI of the conference? You guess you can look at your pipeline, but that totally underestimates and undervalues the partnerships, the advisors, and the referrals that are going to come down the road. So to me, it's a, hey, let's sit down at the beginning of the year. Let's budget out conferences. Let's go through our notes and see the people we met and the pipeline we generated. And did we close any sort of the next year and talk about, hey, here are the conferences we're going to go to. But I wouldn't be dead set on DQing a conference from next year's lineup because the ROI isn't there immediately. There's obviously ROI is a component, don't get me wrong, but figuring out when to calculate it based on your sales cycle and then making sure that you're incorporating other variables, other quantifiables or non-quantifiables into your calculus for what conferences you go to the following year. That's the way I look at it.
Got it. That makes sense. Yeah, because it's, you could meet somebody who gives you an intro the following year to a whale. And that closes. And that, how do you attribute that revenue to the conference that was 18 months ago?
It consistently happens.
Yeah.
It consistently happens. And so, to me, that's a mistake. And it could foreclose great opportunities for you at other conferences.
Right. You miss the intangibles and the stuff you can't necessarily measure.
That's right.
Cool. These are great questions, people. Thanks for firing them in at us. We got a couple more here. And this one's about different roles.
Okay.
So what types of people, actually, I'm going to spin this one a little bit because we talked a little bit about picking personal things.
Yeah.
But how you approach the personal relationship and follow-up, does that change depending on the person's role? If I'm selling to a manager level, should I treat that differently than if I'm selling to somebody in the C-suite?
No, definitely not. I mean, the only way it should change is if you're talking about sending an expensive gift to somebody who works in a big company that's probably got a gifting policy. You ought to be conscious of that.
Okay.
But absolutely not. I mean, to me, it's very tempting to have differentiation around role. Now, it should change based on the prospect. That's where it should change. The prospect and the relationship. You can't spend significant resources on, or it's typically unwise to spend significant resources on a prospect who, as a customer, will contribute in a non-material way to top of bottom line, right? So you got to be wise about it. You have to be smart about it. But to me, often, especially in today's world, and we can get off on this for a while if we wanted to, but influencers are so much more influential than people give them credit for. I got to meet with the decision maker. Bottom up selling. I don't have to tell this group about that. That is as important and as critical and as ubiquitous in today's world as top down and as effective. And so I'd go the other way. Like, the last thing you want to do is underestimate the influence of manager level, director level folks in your buying process.
Right. No, that makes sense. Everybody's a person, right? So you're following up based on the personal relationship you built at the conference.
Yeah, and you could be wrong. Like, you could be wrong about their level of influence. And again, bottom-up selling is real. We all know this. So make sure that, if they're trying to aid you in a bottom-up sales approach, that you oblige.
Excellent. So my last question is, just because we're here at Unleash, and guys, if you missed it earlier, I just want to show you where Jeff and I are sitting right now because it's beautiful. Check this out. We're on the water. We got a nice view. So here's my question, because I know you have a session coming up.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, and if people can find that content from you elsewhere if they're not with us today?
Yeah, sure. So the session coming up here in a couple hours is called How to Shrink Your Sales Cycle. And got some great folks. David Gerhardt from Drift is moderating, so super excited about it. We'll have some follow-up in terms of what we discussed for the group, maybe after the conference. But really my sort of topic du jour is the idea that we as salespeople sabotage our own sales cycles.
Yeah.
We prolong the sales cycle unnecessarily by not giving buyers what they want to talk about. Buyers overwhelmingly now want to talk more about price on the first sales call than salespeople do. Where are we? Where we've got buyers want to hear more about price than salespeople want to talk about it. And, the craziest stats to me are around how much the first and second sales call matter toward an outcome versus the fifth and sixth. Because the data very clearly states that if you have a great first or second sales call versus a bad first or second sales call, the outcomes diverge wildly. Like, the great sales call of the first or second will close at a lot higher rate than the bad. But on the fifth or sixth sales call, it doesn't matter. Like, a good call, bad call, they're going to close at the same rate.
Right.
So how are we going to focus buyers, give them what they want, given that they have access to so much information on us before the initial sales call, give them what they want, and make sure those first sales interactions are super high quality, because those are the ones that matter anyways.
Which applies to what we were talking about earlier about the conference. Like, if you don't have a good, genuine interaction at the conference, it's maybe not the area to put your focus and follow-up. Focus on the people you had a real connection with, right?
Yes, absolutely. Totally right.
Cool. So here, guys, you've joined us. You've been with us through a bumpy ride at the beginning.
Through thick and thin.
Through thick and thin.
Yeah.
You're here right along with us. Thanks for the great questions, everybody. This is why you join the live version. I'm glad you get as much out of it as you want. So we're going to do a couple things and follow up for you just to make this extra special. We're going to package this all up nice and neat. So you're going to have all these tips written out for you. If you couldn't hear any of them, don't worry. We'll get them to you. And Jeff's going to go above and beyond for you, because that's what he does, and give you a couple examples of video follow-up that you could make your own and use when you follow up from conferences. Jeff, thanks for being here. Jeff from Sapper Consulting, everybody. Check them out. Follow Jeff on LinkedIn. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Appreciate it.
We'll see you at the next one. Take care. Bye.